Hoptman entered Wayne University. In one term paper, on adoptive children, which was to serve as the basis for his later master's thesis, Hoptman raised a great deal of controversy when, on page 36, he presented data on those that he felt would be unsuitable adopted parents. Nevertheless, the paper received an A. He graduated from Wayne University with a degree in sociology, but he lacked direction. He worked for a time at Jake's Bar, owned by his father and uncle, and later as an occasional performer with the Modern Quartet. The family structure also changed during this period. In 1949, his sister Yetta married Cactus Jack Trustman, a future advertising executive. David Hoptman eventually landed a job with the Macomb County Crippled Children's Society as a counselor and fundraiser. Hoptman was not only adept at finding benefactors for handicapped children, but also as executive secretary of the organization, he discovered he was able to handle the limelight, being photographed by various newspapers, particularly by the Mount Clemens Daily Monitor leader, receiving contributions from local supporters. But unforeseen difficulties were to follow. In September of 1957, this photograph appeared in a local newspaper. It appears to show Hoptman accepting another check from a private company. However, this picture was not taken in Macomb, but rather in Cadillac, the seat of Wexford County, in the northwest part of the state. The oddity was discovered by Lawrence Orr, a one-time Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist, now a microscope parts quality control representative on the much sought-after Cadillac-Mount Clemens route. When questioned on the matter, Hoptman claimed to have been at home on the night in question, but there were no witnesses and no phone records. The question now arose, why was Hoptman doing business in another part of the state? And where was the money actually going? The Mount Clemens paper, nervous about having potentially backed the wrong horse earlier on, smelled a scandal. But the Detroit News got hold of the story and decided to dig deeper. They suspected an imposter was at work, infiltrating the potentially profitable inner sanctum of county-based children's charities in southern Michigan. An unnamed source led the Detroit News to a classified memo of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. As early as 1955, it said, FBI Chief Hoover had been informed that there might have been something odd going on at the Macomb CCS. The man suspected of being the double fled to Batista's Cuba. Very little was known about him publicly until 1997, when photographs surfaced of Gino Brozzaluto, a member of the notorious Black Hand branch of the Mafia, a murderer and enforcer who is now expanding into grifting. As one can see, he bore a striking resemblance to Hoptman. Now much sought after by the Cuban underworld, Brozzaluto was employed for a short time by the Corleone crime organization. Hoptman was eventually cleared of all charges by a legislative committee and even received a commendation for his efforts on behalf of young people. The Mount Clemens paper reported the event, but was reluctant to admit that it had got the story wrong. Hoptman was soured on the whole business and decided to seek employment elsewhere.
The thrill is gone away.
He moved westward to Boys Republic in Farmington, Michigan. Here he was able to help young men who had brushes with the law or were experiencing other problems. Over the years, he was able to help the likes of Bobs, Cabby, Stinky, Curly, Pee-wee, Scooter, Biff, Shorty, and His Most Serene Highness Mohammad Reza Pahlavi Khan IV, who is facing 4 years for the robbery of a local liquor store. But juvenile delinquency had changed. This was the era of the early Marlon Brando films, and young people were beginning to look up to different role models. In an attempt to communicate more effectively with his young charges, Hoptman decided to fight fire with fire and adopted a radical new look. As predicted, his style change helped him to deal with the residents of Boys Republic, but others were not as impressed. Members of his family spoke out against the newly discovered hooligan in their midst. He was creating an undesirable impression to the outside world. The strongest criticism by far came from his own father, who took the opportunity to express his views on this and other issues in the runaway local bestseller, If you think my son gives me an occasional call, you're wrong. Hoptman eventually modified to a more traditional look, but his tough guy image endured for years to come. So much so that in 1967, David Hoptman was honored with a position of some prominence on the cover of the Beatles' masterpiece, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. His work with Detroit area youth continued at Boys Republic, at the Wayne County Child Guidance Clinic, and at the Jewish Family and Children's Service, where he was able to help and counsel people like Josh, Milt, Manny, Shloime, Isaac, Solly, Nathan, Marvin, and little bitty Mel. The early years were over. The slightly later years were just beginning. Changes were to take place of a significant nature. In the mid-1960s, Hoptman, like many other Americans, made the jump to color. In the next episode, due for completion in 2014, we examine the next few decades, including Hoptman's experiences in married life, family life, and of course, his work with NASA. Truly, the sky was the limit, as the legend of David Hoptman continues.